the way he embraced Buddhism. So I wanted to get us get the audience to the past of what Ambedkar did when he embraced Buddhism. What was the activities he did, and why he chose Buddhism, and what was the impact of that he embracing Buddhism in Maharashtra?
Yeah. So Baba Saheb was given a book as a present, Buddha's book on Buddha, when he passed, I think, 10th, and he was celebrated. That time he was given the book on Buddha, and that was the introduction to Buddha. Uh, After that, of course, Baba Saheb, when he decided that he will, although he is born Hindu, he will not die as a Hindu. So he had made it amply clear that he is going to change or leave Hinduism for sure. In 1935, he made some of those proclamations in a place called Yevla near Nashik. And subsequently, he, of course, studied various other religions, including Islam, Christianity, Sikhism. I believe he even met some of the people in Sikhism and asked them whether he will get the equal treatment. And what he was told, that he will not be given an equal treatment. He will be kind of outcast within the Sikhism as well. Although Sikhism started on the principle of equality, so those things Baba Sahib just didn't like, and that is where he kind of moved towards Buddhism. The way he moved towards Buddhism was the way society is fragmented in caste. So he wanted each of those castes to have their own meetings and come to the conclusion of embracing Buddhism or not. So one such meeting that he had in Bombay, wherein he made that famous speech of Mukti Kon Pathe, wherein he clearly elaborated it was only for Mahars, and he requested other caste also, Matang and other Dhangar and other caste, to decide on their own. Mahars, since Baba Sahib himself was Mahar, the way casteism works, he was from Maharashtra. So it was easy for Mahars to take a lead and follow what Baba Sahib was saying. He was the most learned person. He had kind of earned his respect. So when Baba Sahib finally decided all this culminating into actual taking Buddhism in 1956, 14th October 1956, on a Dashera day, uh, and he chose Nagpur for a reason. Uh, Lakhs of followers followed into Buddhism. So today in Maharashtra, majority of or almost all Mahars have converted themselves into Buddhism. The way it was done, and some of the elders told me, I grew up in a slum called Rambagh, Imamwada in Nagpur. And some of the elders would tell me, when Buddhism was taken, people had those idols, had those photographs, those worship, the jadoo tona, so to say, all those diyas, lamps, jyotish. In one day, they threw all this away. They put that into the rivers, got rid of all of the symbolism that could associate them with Hinduism in overnight. There were meetings, there were committees formed to make sure that all the weddings are done by the Buddhist way. No Brahman is invited for any of those functions or rituals. Uh, Even there was a movement even to stop eating meat, mutton, and so on. When the religion, when the marriages were taking place, there are customs like applying turmeric on the body of the bride and the groom. All those practices were also kind of overnight stopped. That led to a lot of changes. A lot of changes. People stopped believing in God. It didn't happen again in the overnight. That generation, which although embraced Buddhism, you can't get rid of some of those cobwebs in your head in terms of God and whatnot. But the subsequent generation, my generation, we kind of grew up in the household where there are no gods. There is no all of this Hindu dogma, religion, mantra, jantra, ghost, heaven, hell. None of that exists. So we kind of have become atheists. Although we follow Buddhism, we do not believe in a concept of God. And then again, Baba Saheb also gave a Buddhism which is kind of different from what Mahayana and Hinayana, and people even call it, whether they should call it a Navayana or whether they should call it a Vimayana. Baba Sahib said, you give whatever name you want, but having studied, he kind of tried to make the Buddhism as much rational, as much practical, keeping the best, taking the good, taking away the dogma, taking away the another those Jataka stories and Punarjanma and that kind of stuff, keeping that all aside. That's the pure form of Buddhism, the way we call it. He gave, and it led to a significant changes in the people's society. And then having done all of this, when there were like so much of energy in amongst the people, what do we do now next? And that is when, of course, Baba Sahib had said, give up all your traditional form, like skinning the cows, carrying the dead animals, all of that. Give up all your old professions and embrace education, move towards the cities, leave the villages. So one generation, the generation before our generation, had to go through a lot of trouble by way of, because the means of livelihood, what they were accustomed to, the income that they were getting because of these traditional trades, were gone all of a sudden. They left their comfort zones of villages, moved towards the city, and literally had to kind of hand to mouth existence, work around whatever way they worked. They worked in Nagpur kind of situation. They worked in Empress mills, the Tata's textile mills that were there, or anything, any, and they sacrificed a lot, but they made sure that their children are put through education. And then by around 70s, early 70s, mid 70s is when people were educated enough to take advantage of the employment reservation and things like that. And that is how the whole change, the entire upliftment of the society has happened. Unfortunately, some of the other castes like Matang, or what we call Mang, Dhangar. I'm not trying to demean or any such thing. It's just for the namesake, since that's how they are named. I'm taking those names. These other castes didn't embrace Buddhism, so the energy that needed for the change, that really didn't get transformed to them. The energy that was enthused, the Buddhist people who were enthused with all of these changes. Okay, now that we have given up all of this mumbo jumbo, what do we do next? And then embrace the education. They gave up all of that. That change, those changes didn't really happen in other other caste in Maharashtra and elsewhere. Unfortunately, Baba Sahib during his lifetime couldn't really travel. Baba Sahib had this vision that he would go to all the regions across India. He will convert entire India into a Buddhist nation. Unfortunately, within 8 weeks of conversion, on 14th October, he passed away in on December 6, 1956, the same year. So he could keep his promise that he will, although born as a Hindu, will not die as a Hindu. That promise he could keep, but given his failing health, he couldn't really travel. He couldn't really convince even the other caste in Maharashtra, let alone the other regions, to embrace Buddhism. Of course, slowly as the education and as the Ambedkarism and as the awareness about Ambedkar is spreading all over, there is a lot of awareness about Buddhism. And typically, you will find most of the people who call themselves Ambedkarite sooner or later convert to Buddhism.
So Chamars were in the army, and give me some historical reason how Chamars entered. Mahars. Sorry, Mahars were in the army, and
Hmm.
give me a historical context of how Mahar's regiment was there. Because when Ambedkar gave a call that you come, leave everything, it had to be that some independence that community already had. Not that independent, away from the village structure. At least a population must have been there when we read about the Mahar regiment and the war, what they did against the Peshwas, right?
Yeah.
Peshwa
Yeah.
army. So therefore, give a context of how this Mahars in the army were also in the forefront of supporting Baba Sahib.
Yeah. So Mahars had a lot of advantages. See, although untouchable, they also had kind of important role to play in the village economy. What we call police patil kind of role, disputes amongst the boundaries, the village boundary, the farm boundaries between the friends or the neighbors, and that's a police patil kind of role is a pretty important role. So they had, or a kotwal as we call them. Those were the kind of roles that these people had. They were also kind of border guards, in the sense anybody entering villages, since they were on the outskirts of the village, they would know who is coming in, who is not coming in. So in that sense, they had a lot of prominent activities despite being untouchable. And some of these had led to, like, Baba Saheb's father was in the army. He was a subedar in the army. So a lot of Mahars were also, of course, in the army. See, sometimes the numerical strength and the kind of activities that they were doing also gave them some confidence. So they were prominent. Mahars in Vidarbha region especially had a lot of land holding as well. Although we know that the untouchables are not supposed to hold land, a lot of Mahars in Maharashtra, in Vidarbha, especially in Vidarbha region, had lands. People tell that because there were tribal kings, Gond kings, etc., who would give a lot of pattas, as they call it, or the titles of the land. So a lot of Mahars and some of this economic prosperity they had, so they were kind of used to a little bit of education, etc. In Maharashtra, again in Nagpur area, I refer to the textile mills of Tatas. A lot of Mahars were working in those textiles mills as well, and they were organized as a labor union. So there were that they had some base to build or to propel, to launch themselves upon. They were in the army, they fought the Bhima Koregaon war where in lieu of freedom against the Peshwais. See, Peshwais is when the untouchables had, or the Mahars and the other untouchable castes had it worst. And there was a need to kind of rebel. And since they were well built, they were into Pahelwani, what they call Kushti and those kind of things. They were in the army, they had a little they had important roles, important activities in the village economy. They were in that sense were not very extremely subdued as one would expect them to be, like, Uh, so there was that foundation was there, which helped them to make the changes. Numerically also they were strong. So currently about 8% of Maharashtrians are Buddhist. And you can safely assume that all of them are Mahars and maybe a little more. So roughly around 10% of the Maharashtrians were probably Mahar. See, another thing that one should see is wherever there is a prominent number, um, when a prominent number or the kind of majority amongst the scheduled caste, those scheduled caste groups have tended to do well. You call it Chamar or Jatav in UP, you call it, I think, Malas in Andhra. Because of the numerical strength, numbers, there is a strength, and they tend to well. They tend to do well. They are ahead in the curve in terms of any new changes, any revolution kind of thing, any revolutionary thought. They are constantly striving for bettering themselves. So that also helps.
So, what is happening in the present Buddhists? Because in
Hmm.
Tamil Nadu, the Buddhist, if we say it refers to a particular caste.
Hmm.
And in Maharashtra also, I'm certainly not of the opinion that Maharashtra's young Mahars, Buddhists, young Buddhists, are not a people who would reduce the Buddhist identity to one particular caste. At least the young Mahars, I don't believe in that. But across India, at least in Tamil Nadu, that's been happening. It has been owned, and it said that it is the Buddhism is particular to one particular Dalit caste, and it is we or their members like that. They seclude. They are not inclusive. So you must have seen this across debates in various groups, also forums. Also, how do you see, and what is the way forward for the Buddhists?
Yeah, so like I said, Baba Saheb did these caste-based meetings, right? Wherein he wanted every caste to decide on their own whether to embrace Buddhism or not. Some castes did, some castes didn't. The Mahars didn't, because we were lucky in the sense we are from the Mahar, Baba Saheb from himself, Mahar, same caste, extremely very well educated. And when he's telling certain things, okay, we would follow. So to that extent, Mahar's majority, like 90% Buddhists, are erstwhile Mahars. that is there. But it's not, that doesn't mean that the other caste can't. And slowly there is awakening, especially in other castes, other untouchable castes prominently. When there is awareness about Baba Saheb, there is a movement towards taking up Buddhism. It is not exclusionary. The Buddhists do not want that only Mahar should there, others shouldn't come. Like Baba Saheb said, he wanted to make the entire India Buddhist. Buddhamai is what he would call it, because he really believed that the way Buddhism preaches the equality, fraternity, he wanted that to be there in all over India. He professes that in the constitution, all of that. So it is not exclusionary, but it so happens when 90% of those are erstwhile Mahars, people will tend to call, oh, these are all the neo Buddhists or the Buddhists are Mahars, erstwhile untouchables. And this is going to happen unless there is a other caste, other for that matter, other religion, for that matter, even upper caste. And there is a very trickling effect. Even the upper caste who are sensitive, who are aware, who are reading Baba Saheb, there is a movement towards converting to Buddhism. Although it's not prominently, it's that movement hasn't really kind of taken off. It's very slow, kind of trickle down kind of effect. But that movement is there. So there is nothing exclusive about it. But yes, it gets attributed to one particular caste. But if that caste is saying, oh, and we have seen some of these arguments. If you claim to be Ambedkarite, but you are not Buddhist, then you are not an Ambedkarite. I think that is a exclusionary thought. The conversion to Buddhism is changing religion is not easy. Is a big step. I am lucky in my generation because my parents they converted, my previous generation converted, so I didn't have to take that big decision. But otherwise, you are grown in some one way of living, and all of a sudden you kind of get rid of that and move into different religion is not easy. It's a very, very slow, conscious kind of process. Unless there is a tall leader like Baba Saheb, probably belonging to your own region, your own caste, the way casteism works, people will convert. Like in Andhra, probably if R.S. Praveen Kumar sir were to convert to Buddhism, maybe there will be a good movement towards. So we will need local leaders. Maybe Manevar Kanshiramji, had he taken Buddhism, formally taken the Buddhism, he called himself Buddhist, by the way. His rituals were all, after his death, his rituals were also done by the Buddhist way. Mayawati's nephew's son's marriage, etc., nephew's marriage, etc., was also done by the Buddhist. So they are Buddhists in that sense, but they have not formally converted. If they formally convert, that trickle down movement that there is will kind of take a big momentum. Will carry forward in various regions and things like that. We will need local leaders in various states to take Buddhism, and that's the way kind of it's going to grow. But this exclusionary thought that, oh, if you are not a Buddhist, then you cannot call yourself Ambedkarite, is completely incorrect. It's a very slow process. Introduction to Ambedkar, because of Baba Saheb's writing, is happening slowly and steadily. People are reading Baba Saheb, understanding Baba Saheb, what he wanted to say. Baba Saheb was buried, right, in the sense. But then the Mahar community, the Buddhist community from Maharashtra, kept him alive, brought him into the main focus today. Today he's driving the main discourse in the country, and people are getting aware, and slowly people will move to Buddhism. But it's a slow process. Let's not prevent others. Oh, if you are not a Buddhist, you are not an Ambedkarite. That thought needs to be curtailed. It comes from some of our conservative folks. That needs to be kind of curbed a lot. But it is not exclusionary race, for sure.
So
all are welcome.
So last question. Did the Ambedkar visioned about Buddhism as an emancipatory religion or ideology, I would say? In that case, did the caste system was broken by this embracing Buddhism? How did that was seen on the ground?
Yeah. So there is one. So in Mahars, there say there were a lot of subcaste. Bhavne, Barke, Ladwan. There are 12.5. Somebody says 50. There are a lot of subcaste. Today, when everybody is converted to Buddhism, there is no question of asking, oh, what is your subcaste? And earlier, the marriages used to happen within the subcaste. So Hindu, Mahar, within the Mahar, this Ladwan, Bhavne, Barke, Kosre, Samos, all of these 12 and a half castes or more, marriages used to happen within those subcastes. Today, that is completely gone. So today, the marriages happen amongst the Buddhists. Nobody checks the caste or the subcaste. So that's a prominent, that's a significant change. Another and annihilation of caste is the practice which is there for a couple of thousand of years, is not going to go away in one shot. One of the thing is we will have to elevate ourselves. We'll have to extricate ourselves also by way of like I was referring to earlier when Baba Saheb said, give up all your old professions. Do not carry that carcasses or a skinning of the cows. In fact, Baba Saheb was asked this question in one of the meetings by one of the reporter, saying, you are asking your followers to not do all this, and that will cause a significant economic loss to people, by way of they will lose the skin of the cow, which probably used to fetch whatever money it used to fetch. Um, why are you doing that? And Baba Saheb asked him whether I should answer this in person or should I answer it in the meeting that he was going to address. And the reporter said, you can address it, your call, sir. And Baba Saheb addressed it in the public meeting. And all he said was, he said, you do, if there is economic benefit, why don't you do it? You do it, you keep the money from whatever money that you earn out of all this, and I will give you more money on top of it. Will you do it? And of course, the Brahmin reporter, he said, no, he will not do it. He said, the reason you are not going to do it, despite I'm kind of doubling your economic benefits, you are not going to do it. That is the reason I do not want my caste people to do it. And that is when people kind of gave up all those traditional vocations, came to the cities, worked as a laborer on mason and whatever work they did, and then they have extricated themselves. So there is a caste mobility in that sense. Some of Nadar in Tamil Nadu have kind of uplifted themselves. We, of course, we do not want any caste. We want everybody to be equal. It's not that one caste goes down, one caste should be eradicated. But the caste will probably, or people who are former untouchables, they have to give up their traditional vocations. They have to, probably 1 or 2 generations have to suffer by way of just doing the menial labor kind of work in the cities, get them themselves educated and elevate themselves both socially as well as socially, educationally, and economically. That's one way the caste can be tamed. I don't know whether it can be eradicated. I hope it is, but that's one thought I have raised.
But so the caste of maybe all the subcastes within the Mahars all joined hands after everyone became a Buddhist. So now we all call Buddhists. So now, how did the society see? Did the society see this Mahar as an untouchable SC, or they started saying no, they're not untouchable? How did they treat?
Yeah, yeah. So of course, it's just not a name change. If we look at the statistic wise, the erstwhile Mahar, the today's Buddhists are doing phenomenally well. If you look at the number of graduates, the percentage of graduates, number will be lesser. Percentage of graduates in the Buddhist is the highest, next only to the Jains in Maharashtra. If we look at the number of women, again, percentage of women that are employed again, percentage wise, are pretty high. Unfortunately, the divorce rates in Mahar are also pretty high. Now, divorce rate is a kind of negative indicator. At the same time, I view it as a positive indicator. What it tells is the ladies, the women are employed, are financially independent, are able to kind of get out of the marriages if the marriage is not working out for whatever reason, right? It's a kind of emancipatory thing in that sense. So all these parameters, and I'm not talking about the men, like Baba Saheb said, the measure of the progress of the society should be measured by the how the women are doing. So that therefore the Buddhists are doing very well. And looking at Buddhist community now, other communities have started demanding the reservation and things like that. So the tag of untouchable, Mahar, all of those is kind of is shaken off. It is off now. Buddhists are looked at educated, well dressed, employed, well-to-do kind of people in Maharashtra. So and it has not happened in a jiffy. It has taken, like I was referring, one generation kind of completely gave up all those things. They came to the cities, they worked hard, they educated kids. Some of the practices, some of the schemes of government like scholarships, etc., had helped. Reservation in education, of course, helped. Reservation in the employment certainly helped. And based on all of this, now the Marathas, the so-called the Maratha caste or Kunbis in Maharashtra, are asking for reservation. They are looking at it. They remain stuck in villages. They remain stuck because they had a prominent land holdings, that they were kind of rulers in the villages. They didn't leave the villages, whereas our people left, took advantage of the facilities, the scholarships, the reservations, educational and employment reservations, and have done well. And now they are also asking for the reservation. That's the battle. So all of a sudden we are kind of leading the packed in terms of economic, social, educational kind of parameters arise.
Anything else? We have 5 more minutes.
No, if you have questions, certainly kind of we can talk a few other things if you want. But I thought some of these perspectives kind of are not highlighted well enough. A lot of people think, oh, it's just a name of it's a tag name change tag. It is not. It really enthused that generation which was blindly in love with Baba Saheb. Of course, they are well read and whatnot. They took Baba Saheb, they understood Baba Saheb, and then they followed him. And there is a complete emancipation of the Mahars in Maharashtra, and a lot of other castes in other regions are also following it up, albeit slowly. I wish a good leadership in respective states. See the way we are fragmented by way of state, by way of languages. It's